Hey folks, it's incredible how some agents are just ready to take advantage of their clients. I'll explain what happened and then get into the latest home prices and insights for the City of Toronto for week ending May 31, 2023. Now, the scenario I'm about to talk about happened just this past week to me, but I also talked about this scenario a few months ago because it happened then, and from time to time it comes up. I'm representing the buyers in this scenario, and this, again, just last week. Property comes on the MLS, and it's in an area of Toronto where there's not that many listings like this one, so it's very attractive to my buyers that, hey, this is a good house for us, but it's the kind of property and the kind of neighborhood that it would be attractive to many buyers. So we know we've got to kind of act quickly. I'm reading the listing and it says offer dates are in 6 days from now. So they're holding back offers. A very common scenario in lots of different parts of Toronto. So I book a showing, not for the next day, the day after. What's the harm, right? Because we got offer dates still a few days away. We can see it, not the next day, the day after, we're all set. I'm calling the listing agent. He's answering my calls. He happens to be a very prominent agent in that neighborhood. He's answering my calls, answering my questions, talking to me about the property, really selling the property and talking about all its great features. He's responding to my texts. Everything's going the way it should. Remember, my showing is booked not the next day, but the day after. The next day at 4:30, I receive an email saying, we've received an offer. We're going to be reviewing it at 6. An hour and a half notice. They received an offer, and I get this message at 4:30. I don't know when they received the offer, but at 4:30 I get the message. We've got an offer registered. We're reviewing it at 6. It's 4:30. I'm in my car between appointments. Most buyers are leaving work, maybe still at work, stuck in rush hour. Most parents are around that time driving the kids here or there from school, picking them up. There's so many things going on during that time. Nobody could react. I'm trying to reach the agent. I'm phoning. He's not answering this time. He was quick to answer the day before, but now he's not answering. I'm texting. What's going on? This doesn't give enough time. My clients are really interested in this house. I'm doing everything I can to get this person to react. When you tell a listing agent, hey, I have clients that are interested, it's kind of like, oh, I want to know more about your clients, because the listing agent's job is to, part of it, get as much as they can for their sellers, to act in the best interest of their sellers. This agent isn't responding to any of those things. Finally, at 6 o'clock, he responds by text saying, property is sold. So earlier it's being reviewed at 6 o'clock, the offer. Property is sold. I was frustrated. I was upset, thinking, how can this just happen so quick, so fast? It doesn't make any sense. It must be a really good offer, right? That's what everybody would be thinking. That would be the logical thought process here. Wow, it must have been a really good offer. Maybe we couldn't have competed anyways if the offer's so good. Well, when I find out the price, it was an average price for the area. There's a really good chance that my clients would have paid more. And there's most likely a lot of buyers out there that would have paid more just because the price was nothing special for that neighborhood, that house. Then I also find out there was only one offer, that offer. And I'm saying that because I know some of you are gonna, oh, Santo, you're just upset that you couldn't get your offer in there. Nobody else could get their offer in there the way it was handled. So this property gets sold the day after it gets listed. When they advertised an offer date, it gets sold the next day. with only the one offer at an average price that many buyers would have paid more. And it turns out the agent, the brokerage that represented the buyer is from the same brokerage as the listing agent. So many things are fishy about this transaction. So many things don't smell right about this transaction. And it's a disservice, first of all, to the seller. I truly feel the home was undersold. My buyer clients are looking at me going, Santo, what the hell's going on here? What's wrong with these people? They cheated this. My client said, looks like the agent cheated the sellers. My clients are telling me that. And I can't disagree. So yeah, it kind of seems like that. And then when you see that it's the same brokerage, what's going on? Is the listing agent doing a favor for one of his colleagues, just pushing it through? It's a favor at the expense of the seller. Is it one of their own buyers that they maybe said, hey, can you, to one of their colleagues, can you just represent this buyer for this transaction, and we'll get a piece of the commission there? These scenarios happen. So because of the way the whole thing was handled, this is what comes to mind. And like I said, this is a prominent agent. These things shouldn't happen, but they do. So you kind of gotta watch out for yourself. Who you hire matters. Just because they got a big billboard on the street doesn't mean they're a great agent and they will work in your best interest. Who you hire matters. If you think this video can help somebody pass it along. If you get value from this video, subscribe. If you want to speak with me about your real estate situation, selling, buying, below this video in the description is a link to my calendar. Click on that, book a time that's convenient for you, and we'll talk about whatever's on your mind. Let's get into the numbers. Has the summer price decline started? Every year for several years, it seems like come mid-spring, prices tend to start going the other way, and the summer is just quiet, price declines, there's just no action. Now normally, it used to be kind of mid-July to August, things would quiet down a bit. But now it seems to be starting much earlier. When I say now, over the last few years, and every year there was a reason, there was an excuse. First the health crisis, and then, we're just coming out of the health crisis. Nobody's got it's the first time in years in the summer we can start travel again, so everybody did that. And it seems that there's something every summer. Let me show you what's happening right now. Here's a quick summary. The freehold properties are here, town, semis, detached. So week over week, there's price declines in each of those three areas, each of those three property types. Condos went up, but condos is a whole different market than the freehold. We don't have weeks and weeks of a trend right now, but this is kind of what's on my mind. Are we going to be seeing the same thing again this summer? Well, we're just right at the very beginning. Our price is going to now continue to drop. That's the big question. I know many of you have an opinion. Please share it in the comments below. Let's start off with detached properties. This is for the City of Toronto, only the City of Toronto, broken down by week for a whole year. The last week I have here is week ending May 31st. Sales did jump up quite a bit. Remember the previous week, there was a long weekend in that week. Sales jumped up. 215 detached properties were sold. The amount of property selling at $2 million or more also jumped up. We went from 52 to 69 properties selling at $2 million or more, but average sold price came down. And it's not often you'll see that where the amount of property selling at $2 million or more jumps up by as much as it did here, from 52 to 69. but yet average sold price comes down. So the overall price has come down, the average price to $1,851,000. And just to put that in context, comparing to what's happened in recent history, the peak was February last year. We're 11% lower than the peak price, which equates to $224,000 approximately. The low, our lowest month was July last year, the summer. July last year, the average was $1,518,000. We are currently 22% up from our low price, and that's $333,000 up from when we were our low. So I guess the other question is, did we miss the bottom? Are we going to be coming back down to the low, or did we miss the bottom? And even though it goes up and down, we're just not going to get back to that. That's also, I know, on a lot of people's mind, because many of you thinking about buying, when it was here, were waiting and waiting and waiting for prices to come lower. Did you miss it? Let's see. Compared to last year, $1,851,000 is 5% lower than last year's average sold price. The median price is 6% higher than last year's median price, and both average and median price have been trending upwards. And I'm looking at not just the actual average and median price, but the dotted line. That's a 4-week moving average. It kind of makes it simpler to spot a trend, and it takes away some of the peaks and valleys. But both have been, it's very clear, trending upwards. I've got 3 months on the board here. 215 we said were sold, 62% sold at list price or more. I have been talking over the last few weeks saying we're seeing fewer offers on properties. We can kind of feel from working with buyers and sellers that the intensity is kind of dropping a little bit. Well, you could see it here with the percentage selling at list price or more. It's only slight, but it is kind of trending down over the last 3 weeks. Listings are up. I've also mentioned that we are seeing more choices out there. That leads to prices coming down a bit. That leads to not as intense and fighting over one property when there's more to look at. Well, listings did jump up from 334 to 398, almost 400 listings in that week. Months of inventory came down, and this is kind of opposite of what I'm talking about, prices coming down, but we went down to 1.2. The average days on market was only 10 for last week. But if you see here, as months of inventory climb up, prices are coming down, and this week we've seen months of inventory come down. Let's see what happens. I mean, things change so quickly these days in the real estate market. Here's a summary of the different parts of Toronto. And when you kind of look at this, some of the areas that stand out to me, Scarborough, 71% selling at list price or more. East York Beaches area, 83% selling at list price or more. We said for all of Toronto, months of inventory was 1.2. In Scarborough, it's 0.9. It's below the average. East York, 0.7 is the months of inventory. Etobicoke, it's 1. Weston Yorkdale, it's 1. So different neighborhoods behaving very differently, and depends on where you're working. You're not going to have the same experience. You could be selling in one neighborhood, buying in another. It's not the same intensity in each of the different parts of Toronto. Semis. Sales went down. 49 semi-detached properties were sold. 14 of those were at $1.5 million or more, which is half of what we did the previous week. Average sold price came down to $1,372,000. $1,372,000 is 5% lower than where the average sold price was a year ago. The median price is 12% higher than where the median price was a year ago. And there's not a big difference between average sold price and median price. They're almost the same, but both have been trending upwards. Months of inventory climbed up to 1.1 months of inventory. 86% of the semis sold at list price or more. So if someone calls me and says, Santo, I want to buy a semi, I'm going to prepare them. I'm going to have a conversation, say, look, it's very competitive. Last week, 86% of semis sold at list price or more. Here's townhouses. 26 townhouses. These are freehold townhouses. 26 were sold. 6 of those were at $1.5 million or more. Average sold price came down week over week to $1,354,000. 1,354 is 10% higher than where the average sold price was a year ago, and the median price is 6% higher than where the median price was a year ago. And if you look at average and median price, just because sales are so low, the volume of sales are so low in townhouses, you're going to get the peaks and valleys. But looking at the 4-week moving average, over the last few weeks, trending up a little bit, but also kind of quite flat. It's not as pronounced, the increase in prices, as we see in some of the other home types. Months of inventory came way down to 0.8, came down from the previous week. Average days on market is only 6 for freehold townhouses, very competitive. 81% sold at list price or more. Here's condos. Totally different behavior than a freehold market. 345 condos were sold, which is up quite a bit from the previous week. The amount of condos selling at $1 million or more jumped up from the previous week, where for week ending May 31st, 51 condos sold at $1 million or more. Average sold price jumped up to $823,000. Now, compared to the peak, which was March last year, we're only off by 1%, which is $9,000. That's nothing when you're talking about these kinds of prices. So we're basically just knocking on the door of peak pricing a year ago. The low was in August. We are up 12% from the low price. 12% equates to about $85,000 up from our low. So if you were looking to buy a condo and you thought, I'm not going to buy here, I'm going to wait for prices to be lower, did you miss the bottom? Now, I should say, when you look at this as the low and then you start seeing, well, it's lower here, you're right, it is lower here, and I could use one of these months, but this is, kind of the end of November, December, January. I prefer not to use December and January as lows, just because the holiday season, it's just not so realistic when it comes to actual real prices, when it comes to the general market behaving. So I'm not using December, January. The low was last year, August, $738,000 for condos. Compared to last year, though, $823,000, it's 2% higher than where the average sold price was a year ago. The median price is even Steven, the same as it was a year ago, and both median and average prices have been trending upwards. Not as aggressive as, say, the detached market, but very steady, trending upwards over the last, I've got here 3 months, but it's been trending up much more than 3 months now. 345 were sold, 46%, less than half, are selling at list price or more. So it's not as intense as the detached market. Listings are up. We went from 607 to 688 listings, and months of inventory came down to 1.6. I've got all sorts of arrows here. So months of inventory came down, prices went up. Months of inventory increased, prices came down. And then again, months of inventory dropped, prices went up. That's the general relationship between months of inventory and prices. Here's a quick summary. We're still very much in a seller's market, but things are changing out there. We're seeing it. Some of them are subtle changes. We have seen summer sluggish over the last few years when it comes to prices and sales. Are we heading? There's some signs that that's where we're headed already. over the next few weeks, we'll obviously have a much clearer picture as to what's happening over the summer. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.